Hello, everyone. My name is Tichawa Mutsielwa. I'm the co-founder of Empowerment, which is part of EmpowerWorks. EmpowerWorks also has programs for youth, women, entrepreneurs, with the capacity to do activations at events. Welcome, and thank you for choosing to join the digital conversations hosted by Empowerment. It is a monologue, and your mics will be muted, and your videos sometimes will be switched off. The views of the speaker are his and not those of Empowerment. We are just providing a platform for these crucial talks during this lockdown period. We'd like to thank the speaker's firm for organizing the speaker. Bonsai Shongwe is going to talk to us on men and principles, how to navigate the new era post-COVID-19. So why did Empowerment provide these platforms, especially during lockdown? First, is to encourage the narrative from pointing a finger at men to inviting men to play their part in finding sustainable solutions to the social challenges of equality, to equip men to rise above the stereotypes, the status quo, and holistically become great men. It is to inspire men to fight for all the right reasons, to stand up for all the right things, and unapologetically embrace all things to be a man. Provide an inclusive platform that challenges every person who calls himself male, no matter their position in life, sexual preference, stature, or nature, to become an active agent of change at work, at home, and in their community. I welcome everybody that has contacted us through our WhatsApp line of 082-088-5261, as well as visiting the Empowerment website. Particular special welcome to everybody around the world who's joined us as we are streaming live on the following digital platforms: EmpowerWorks, YouTube, Instagram, Empowerment at Empowerment, Twitter at Empowerment, Facebook at Empowerment, and the hashtag that we are following is I am Empowerment. Bonsai Shongwe needs no introduction. He's going to go straight into his talk, men and principles, how to navigate the new era post-COVID-19. Over to you, Bonsai. For the next 25 minutes, we're going to be just listening to you. Over to you, my brother.
A great big thank you, sir. It's an honor to have an opportunity to speak to men on this platform. I have to thank obviously yourself, Mr. Masiza, Empower Men, for this opportunity, and I've got to thank the speakers firm for making it possible for speakers such as myself and all the men who have been coming up to share this. So thanks so much, that this chap. Men and principles. Now, I've been listening to some of the talks that have come up before me, some excellent speakers. I think I'm speaking straight after Gugu, amazing thinker, clear articulator, a courageous speaker as well, who's come up to say some things that are not often popular to be said. And also being a pastor, I get to have an unusually higher access to what is happening in society, because when problems come up, you get to listen to what's going on. And maybe let me start with some serious bad news that you may know, but you need to hear it. Men are in trouble. Hey, amatota senkingeni. Men are really in trouble. Men are a species that needs to be put on the endangered species list. And I'm not saying because men are not around, but men are in trouble because we speak of COVID, and I think this is just an example of how changes can be thrust upon us that we did not prepare for, that we did not plan for, that we have no reference for. I have never known what it means to stay indoors for 3-4 weeks at a time, and only leave to just buy something and come back. This is something I never prepared for. I have no reference. I have no traditional preparation for it. Uh, I can't even call my father and say, how did you guys do it? I can't call my grandfather. Well, he's late, but he wasn't around in 1918 with the Spanish flu. And so this is a picture of what man or men are living under right now. Men are living under uncertainty. Men are living under being exposed to new realities. Um, my dear friend Simpiwe Masiza speaks about that, we go to school to work hard, get qualifications, get a job, so you can hopefully get paid and you can go back home and be a man. And you get home and you find that your monthly salary is now her daily limit. And now, what do you say when there's an agreement? You're like, and she says, yeah, but I pay 70% of the bond. And the last 3 months while you were hustling, I kept things running. And so you find men don't know, then we have new roles that come upon us. Now, you can't ask your dad for advice because he always had the money. And if there was a disagreement, and now if you ask him, that's what he's going to say. And you're like, yeah, it's not really my house because actually we got the bond on her ability. And we live in a time when there are more opportunities for comparison, competition, which, Sipho Mnyageni was speaking about a small penis. And that's just the perfect understanding of how comparison, competition affects us men. Every single one of us, when you started going to public toilets, it was a research project because you would stand in the urinal, look to the left, look to the right, look down. You get to compare because at no other time do you have so many penises right next to you. And now you get to compare. And here's the interesting thing is, so interestingly, one of the main causes for insecurity around penis size, as far as just amachita are concerned, is the angle, right? It's the angle. So it's just the visual thing. If you look straight down at something pointing away from you, you decrease its size. And if you shift that same thing to the left and have this angle of view or perspective, you elongate it and you increase its girth. But our research project didn't even include that, right? We didn't even factor that in to say, if you're looking straight down, it's small. If you look right, if you look left, it's larger. And so then you have all men thinking, I have a smaller one than everybody. But now here's what happens. There are more opportunities of these kinds of comparisons and competition because many men are living a recipe for disaster. Here's what it is. Many men are comparing their actual life to the next man's virtual life. Right now, look at me right here. I'm sitting in my own coffee shop. It's locked down, right? There's that person behind me there. You see them? That lady right there, she's sitting there. She's not moving. There's this white guy who keeps walking past. You see the cars back there, and they're all doing my bidding. They're not even going to come and disturb me because this is a virtual set. I could be sitting in Kukwini, right? And all you see is this corner. And now many men, there are more opportunities like this because of social media to compare our actual lives to virtual lives, because we can go to a studio, take a picture with your woman, match clothes. And you sit there and you start thinking, I wish I had a relationship like that. So men are in trouble. Too many voices. This is where we're living now. When we were growing up, we knew everyone's entitled to possess, to have an opinion. And you needed to do something to qualify for the right to share your opinion in public, right? We can all have an opinion, but you need to do something or know something or study something or go through something to qualify to share your view in public. What do you need now to share your view in public? An email address, which is free from Google. And as soon as you have an email address, you can have a couple of accounts. You then invite everybody and you just say anything. So now we live in a time when men don't even know which voice to listen to. And often there are so many voices that are telling us as men who we are, who we should be, how we should behave. We have phrases like a real man. And we have everyone talking about men. If you go on the average person's social media, there's a lady there talking about what a good man should have done. There's a dude posting about what a good father should have done. There's someone talking about what, it's Mother's Day. Everyone's posting about, thank God for all the female fathers. So everyone is sharing their opinion. And the difficulty is that many men are in trouble because this is a new reality. It is just like COVID. It's a new exposure. You have concepts that come to you in a way that has changed. We used to hear elders tell us about marriage. Now you can have 18-year-old girls tell you about marriage. We used to know what manhood is from asking a 60-year-old man. Now you can hear it from a 20-year-old boy if he's diligent enough to get enough followers and phrase it in a way that it goes viral enough. And so COVID for me is a picture of what men are also dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so if men are in that kind of trouble, what's the solution? What's the solution? Because it's really hard to navigate this thing. I was listening to Ukuku speaking earlier, and I was thinking that's a new articulation that he was bringing to talk about gender-based violence against men, because this is something you are not allowed to say as a man. You're not allowed really to say men are also receivers of violation. Because if you think about it, on the left, let's give you a spectrum from left to right. On the left here, you have a common word, a male chauvinist. It's a word you've heard a million times. And if you go all the way, let's say to the right, let's say you have a feminist, and all of us sort of think we sit somewhere in there. And you ask yourself, how come I've never heard the word a masculinist? If we have a feminist, who's one famous masculinist? Why does that word not exist? And we are talking about toxic masculinity now. And I've never heard the term toxic femininity. And you ask, is it because it doesn't exist, or is it? Right? We speak about a male chauvinist. Well, I haven't heard the term female chauvinist. Does that mean being a feminist can go all the way off the rails? At no point do we say, wait, that's now toxic femininity. No, that one is a female chauvinist. They are not a feminist. And so, and what am I saying? Am I saying fix the graph? No. I'm just saying this is the space in which we are operating as men. And so I said I'd talk about principles, so let me do that. So how do you navigate this? How do we navigate uncertainty? How do we keep up with the times? How do we keep up with the changes? I think the answer is so counterintuitive because I don't believe in keeping up with the times. I make no attempt to keep up with the times because when I hear keep up with the times, it sounds to me like the phrase keep up with the Joneses. The problem is when you keep up with the Joneses, you leave your center. You then donate your center to the Joneses, and you say, you are now my center, and I will perceive life, I will decide, I will weigh, I will judge from the center of the Joneses. And we know that keeping up with the Joneses leads to overwhelm. And I believe it's the same thing with the time. Keeping up with the times means allowing the times to become my center. And therefore now I start reasoning, measuring from the times. I start planning. And I think in the end, that is always a recipe for disaster, because when the changes shift you from your principles, overwhelm is the outcome. When changes shift you from being centered on principles, overwhelm becomes the outcome. Let me put it another way to say, to master the future, you have to be presently centered in your purpose and principles, which actually come from the past. To master the future, you have to be presently centered in your purpose, in your principles. Now I'm a Christian, so I draw my wisdom from the Bible. And if you look in the Bible, you go to the book of Genesis that gives an account about the past, and you have God creating a garden, and then he makes man, male man. He then puts him in a garden and gives him a purpose to look after the garden. He then gives him principles. He says, go that way, not that way. And then he gives him a partner. And then he says, I'll give you a partner so she can work with you based on these principles to fulfill this purpose. And so I believe that manhood cannot be defined outside of a clear purpose and clear principles, and only then get a partner. Because if you don't have clear principles and you get a partner, there's a temptation that she becomes your center. If you don't have a clear purpose, how do you define your principles? How do you know what's important if you don't even know what we are trying to accomplish? Like, you got to have a clear purpose. Out of that comes clear principles that, well, if I'm going to accomplish that, then this better be non-negotiable. And only then can you be in a solid enough place to interface with the world, interface with work, interface with society, interface with a wife, interface with money, interface with your life, because you're on a solid footing of purpose and principles. And so this sounds boring because, of course, we want magic. Like, I'm gonna say, keep up with the times and it's different now, do this. And I'm saying, no, the only thing that's changed is that nothing has changed. It's COVID this week. It was load shedding week before. When I was younger, it was 1986. It was state of emergency. Before that, it was moving from the plazas to the kasi and learning kasi. And after that, now we became middle class. We started having cars and tenders, and so things will always be changing. And the way that we can stop overwhelm, because I think many of the problems that men deal with are overwhelm based. Men are overwhelmed. Too many voices, too many chances to compete and compare, too much virtual projection on them, too much of a change of roles between men and women. And so men get overwhelmed because they don't know where to stand. Am I giving solutions? No, I'm merely clarifying the problem and giving a proposal of what the answer is for men. And so in the last 5 minutes, let me make them very clear. Men have this responsibility. If we going together to say your definition is you have a purpose and you have principles to protect this purpose, and based on that, you then have partners, which means interfacing with the rest of the world. If we continue on that proposition, this is what I'm saying. Going forward, realize that you cannot run with all the voices. You cannot run with all the voices. If a man is defined by his purpose and principles, it means, number one, you've got to get comfortable with standing out and believing something. You can't sit and scan all social media information and try fit in with it and try work with it, because it will lead to your own overwhelm. And dare I say, it means you are jumping off your very definition, which is your purpose, which is your principles. So what do? I think you've got to go back after this conversation, and we're opening conversations. You got to get very clear, clearly define it, clearly articulate it, clearly adopt what is my purpose as a man. Why do I exist as a man? What is my purpose? What is the purpose for marriage? You've got to ask that, because if you don't, you're going to hear noises. Think about it. And I mean, for as long as I can remember, this is what people say. Let me just introduce you to my wife. We've been married for 44 years. Yeah. And here's what we've adopted then along the way is the purpose of this thing is to last as long as possible. Then you become a pastor and you realize 44 years after you've had to sit and listen, and I'm just using a number, sit and listen to what's been going on, and you say, no, for me, I'm not so inspired anymore. Because is the purpose of this to outlast the watch? When you said 44 years, why did we start clapping? Why didn't we wait for you to explain the success of it? Right? Now I'm raising a very tough question, and someone will say, usile when I was divorced. And when I did, I got more phone calls from married men over years who said, yo, ngine jealous, baba, yo. As I wish nothing you. Why? No, because my ability to beat the clock was based on compromise. Compromise of my purpose, compromise of my principles. And so what am I saying must happen? I'm saying you need to get clear. This is, for me, the very definition of manhood. You need to get clear, articulated, adopted, and say, what's the purpose of being a husband? What's the purpose of being a father? What's the difference between a father and a mother? Because some of the voices that come tell us a good man is a good male mother. And not much praise happens for fathering, because we're looking for mothering and judging and rating based on mothering. But you got to get clear on the principles to say, what is the purpose of a father? Therefore, what are the principles? What's the purpose of work? Therefore, what are the principles? What's the purpose of money? What's the purpose of everything I interact with in my life? Because once you do that, here's the thing. A man who has a clearly articulated, understood purpose with clearly understood, articulated principles can navigate the uncertainty that will keep coming up because they are centered in a purpose and in a principle. And with having said that, I'm saying, men, it's good that we have done this. Empowerment, thank you. EmpowerWorks, thank you. That is Chaba, thank you so much for this opportunity, because what we need to do as men is to sit and find purpose, find principles. Then nothing that ever comes up in future can take us off our center. Thank you.
Yeah, leadership. As always, thank you very much for the clarity of your message, the simplicity that just makes it so easy to digest. You know, when you ask and say, are you living on compromise? It cuts deep once again, like many of the questions that have been raised on this platform. You talk about purpose, and to what time do we actually allow ourselves to really ask ourselves those questions so that we don't just rely on the external world that is in and around us. Thank you so much for those words. The next conversation is going to be coming up with Untate Mbuyiselo Botha at 3 o'clock, as he now goes quite deep around the rise of people who feel really that this restriction or this unnatural space has really put them in a space where they need help outside. And the question is, we must feel so uncomfortable where we are. I'm going to unmute you all just to see him out and just clap him out and say thank you very much, Ndate Bonsai, for your words. I will see most of you at 3 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you, Baba.